generating public feedback about this big project, the Rempke site project. So I'll be moderating today's session, walking everybody through the different presentations, and then pulling questions from you guys at the end. So if you have questions that you want to remember to ask, write those down as the presentations are happening, so that when we come back to questions at the end, you have those ready, because we want to make sure we hear all the questions you've got. Today, or after the last time, we realized that it was going to be better to have all the presentations run one after the next. Jack, Cameron, if I can ask Jack to mute everybody, so that because we're getting a little bit of background chatter, so you guys will all be muted. Once we get to the question and answer period, we'll ask you to unmute your microphone when you need to speak. So with that said, Jack's going to mute you, and Jack, you're up.
Oh, I muted you. Sorry, I muted everybody.
That's all right. That's all right. Yeah.
All right. Well, unfortunately, Mr. Davis couldn't be here to welcome you. So in lieu of Mr. Davis, I'm going to put Mrs. Seavey on the spot. Cheryl, would you like to welcome everybody from the elected folks?
Absolutely. I want to just thank everyone for taking the time to help us with the decisions that we're about to make with the mixed development use. And for all of you to be ambassadors of understanding of what we're doing and how it's going to work for the betterment of everybody. Our first concern is always our residents, their social, their safety, everything that has to do with the 30,000 people that live in Delhi Township. And we thank all of you for being here today, and we so value your input. Your input is how the decisions will be made. So thank you so very much from the Board of Trustees of Delhi Township and Fiscal Officer Jim Luby.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here. With us today, we will have some of the elected folks, and just to make sure you're aware, they will not be participating other than Cheryl welcoming you just then. Just with open meeting rules and laws for Ohio, we don't want to get them into any hot water in that regard. So virtually alongside me is Jeff Steck, who you heard, and Jeff is facilitating. We have Greg Otis, who's with Elevar Architects working on this. Mike Combs, he's with Midtown Health, Vice President of Operations, to talk about the fitness center. Lisa Skovic with North Point Group, they are the apartment folks, and then there's various other supporting folks. And I'd just like to set the stage quickly for our conversation today. So as many of you are aware, hopefully, the township worked on a Plan the Pike study in 2015 to talk about revitalizing Delhi Pike. This was to look at improvements, activities, and encourage things on the Pike that would further things and make it better. Today, the site we're talking about is the former Rempke Market property. This was identified in Plan the Pike as a catalytic site, or one that creates momentum and leads to transformation nearby. The input during the Plan the Pike sessions for that property pointed at entertainment, apartments, a town center effect, and some mixed uses. In 2019, the township was afforded an opportunity to look at purchasing the property and was able to buy it at a pretty good price. So we did that and closed in 2019. And at that time, we came out to the public with some concepts of what we thought could go on that property. Those meetings back then, we had about 300 people attend. There were 7 different sessions with residents, stakeholders, Mount St. Joseph University, the Oak Hills schools. So one of the big questions was finances. How are we going to be able to build this and support building it? Operationally, how are we going to support it as it operates? So those are some of the things we think we have some understandings and some solutions to that work. We're excited about the possibilities that this brings to the township, and I want to leave you with one of the visions that was painted in the Plan the Pike document. This is looking into the future of Delhi Pike. Delhi Pike is thriving, and it is again the center of township life. Like Delhi itself, the Pike is safe and welcoming to all. It represents the culmination of long-standing community goals for a greater array of choices for shopping, dining, and entertainment. Place for families of all ages to gather. Better connections by car, foot, bike, and transit. Expanded housing options that serve young and old. Improved parks and public spaces. Increased employment opportunities and opportunities to walk within a Main Street environment and meet friends. The Pike has emerged as a uniquely 21st century village center, source of pride for our community, and one of the reasons why new and returning residents come home to Delhi Township. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jeff.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jack. Just give you a little bit more information about those prior 7 sessions. We had 300 different people, and basically we said, here's a space. And we have some basic thoughts about recreation, township offices, potentially a pool, potentially some commercial uses. And they were very open-ended questions. What would you put in those spaces? So we were not leading the community at all. Community came back with what they wanted to see in this village center. They put lots of ideas out. You can access the summary document that's got all the raw data, basically every comment that I wrote down and that other people wrote on their forms. But there's a summary that was pretty clear, a vision that emerged from all of that feedback, which was the following: a modern, unique, and here's the key, activity center for the whole community, all generations, but especially families. And they wanted indoor and outdoor activities, something that would be happening basically 24/7, maybe 7 to midnight, both inside and outside, but everybody wanted to be active, from older folks to college students. They want activity. Parents of Oak Hills kids love the pool idea, and they love the activity in the outdoor green space. So that's the idea of an active village center was by far the biggest piece of feedback we received across those 7 sessions. So I just want to give you a little bit of a sense of the basic direction before I turn it over to Greg, who is going to show you what they did at Elevar as architects in redetailing the vision based on that feedback from the community. So Greg, you can take it away, sir.
Very good. Good afternoon, everyone. Really proud to be here, and I want to thank my project partners who you'll hear from here in a little bit for participating in the generation of this vision, and that we're excited to share with you today. Lisa Skovic will represent North Point, as Jack suggested, and talk a little bit about the housing project in detail. Mike Combs will be talking specifically about an exciting component of this, which is the recreation center. And Andrew Grossart's available for comment relative to some analysis, if you will, about the financial sustainability of the project, should you have any questions in that regard. So let me jump right in and just say that, more importantly, we thank you for your participation and giving us the feedback that we need, certainly to make sure that this vision is the best it possibly can be. And hopefully you're going to see the presentation come up on your screen now, which is a aerial photograph of the existing Remke site along the Pike, as Jack described it, with the outbuildings, the current outbuildings of Dunkin' Donuts, Wild Mike's, and Arby's in the foreground, a single entrance across the sea of parking, and the Remke building and its neighbors at the time, providing one facade that faces and is parallel to the Pike. And obviously, right now, as it's currently rendered as an environment, is part of the concrete jungle, or the asphalt jungle, if you will, that is Delhi Pike, and what we hope to transform as being a fundamentally a new way of thinking about how this can be catalytic. But I can't get into the plan without speaking first about that feedback that Jeff and Jack articulated. The centerpiece of the future of Delhi Township, modern, fun, and unique with upscale residential components with both indoor and outdoor spaces of gathering and activity for all ages. Families, of course, are fundamental to that. That it be mixed use, that the pieces and parts of this development catalyze and support one another in the development, that along the pike that we've got retail, food and beverage opportunities, that we've got recreation, entertainment, and cultural capabilities woven into this, again, to support family life in Delhi Township. So we're excited to share with you a new vision, a very, very different articulation of the use of space, one that reaches out towards the pike with contemporary architecture, taking advantage of that single boulevard entrance and extending that into a public green space we're calling the Commons, which is a public gathering space around which, instead of just in one big box and one big facade, around which is gathered a mixed-use development that, as you can see, is color-coded to include apartments, and we'll get into the details of that, a recreational and fitness facility with multi-uses, township offices specifically relocated here for the administrative components of the township, and then a civic or cultural center, which is both educational and auditorium facilities included to support a vast array of programming for the community. What's, I think, very unique and different about this is that it breaks down that sea of parking to create front door and convenience parking in the Commons, which we'll see in detail here in a little bit. But then in around the entire perimeter is a shallow parking lot that provides front door and immediate access into any one of the given uses around the perimeter. That's also, as I said, augmented by the front door activity within the Commons. There's a couple of different visions or views of this that I'd like to share. One is this aerial that specifically looks at the organization of the Commons area. And while these buildings look like they're solid, they're actually some bridges where the cars can actually crisscross this space, as well as provide a single cul-de-sac boulevard environment for easy access and front door access to each one of the individual uses. And so that circulation pattern actually breaks down the property into manageable, developable sites individually. From the west, you can see that the cultural center has the opportunities for playgrounds to, again, to represent the opportunities for children, for elders, and families, the like. And down on the ground view, you can see pathways, areas to gather, landscaping, heavily landscaped space. The way that this rendering is put together, you see the trees as ghosted. This will be absolutely heavily landscaped throughout as being a very pedestrian-oriented environment, and that vehicular access will be controlled and for convenience purposes only, and that the perimeter will be the primary access point for parking. You can see down the promenade of the Commons are multiple use opportunities for lectures, concert series, gathering areas for activities that can be pulled as indoor and outdoor activities in combination, small recreational lawns that can be used in, again, in concert as a whole for the entire venue, or can be broken down individually for individual programming efforts that might happen in any one of the uses individually. We also have a, yep.
Real quick question about the green space. A lot of folks mentioned things for kids to do in the green space that were sort of built in, like Washington Park is downtown. And I know it's probably not the time to have that detailed, but there's a lot of sort of open space there. Will that be more refined as far as permanent play infrastructure, so to speak, for families and kids?
Sure. Yeah. So this is a vision, of course. The feedback will direct us more fully as to how to locate these facilities. I mentioned that the cultural center had a playground, but if the playground wanted to be much more of a centerpiece, that certainly is quite possible. Other attributes in the space would be picnic grounds areas where we could bring in food trucks to augment some event that was happening in the commons area. And they could be either closely associated with any one of the given uses, this one in the cultural center, this one over by the apartment complex. Your feedback will be extremely useful in helping us arrange those so that they're appropriately sized and positioned for maximum use.
Yep, got it. Thank you.
Yep. Another view closer to the middle that's showing that the bandstand or open area that if anybody has been to Oxford, Ohio, knows the little bandstand in the center of town, as well as an overview of that cul-de-sac drop-off and parking space that's just outside of the Delhi Township municipal offices and the rec center itself. That view of the municipal offices in integration with the apartments can make them more monumental and municipal in look and feel, but integrated with the architecture overall, and specifically then the centerpiece at the end, this large centerpiece monumental sign celebrating Delhi Township and specifically providing a front door to the recreation center. So a little bit more specifics on the size of these before I turn it over to my partners to describe them individually. The apartments, right now we're showing 226 upscale units that would come by way of private development. Lisa's team, a recreation center up to 40,000 square feet that would be operated by a third party. In this case, we have Midtown with us to speak to the membership strategy and the size of the facilities there. The cultural center, 25,000 square feet that I mentioned would support educational opportunities for early childhood, seniors and arts programming, and of course the auditorium, along with the administrative aspects of the township that Jack can speak to in further detail. So let me transition the conversation now to Lisa's presentation, and Jack, take over the screen, unless there's any other questions at this point.
Yeah, let me do just a couple quick things. One comment and one question that are interrelated. So one of the biggest pieces of feedback was the community wanted a lot of space to do classes, to do art, to just have meetings of the Rotary Club or whatever it is, all kinds of different needs for space. And so you guys dramatically increased the square footage of what would be the cultural center. So that was directly responsive to the community and takes up a big chunk of that of this project. What's not in there that the community has mentioned quite a bit is there's no retail and there's no restaurants. Can you just say a little bit? I know one thing is that the cultural takes up a lot of that space that would have been retail or restaurants, but are there other market forces or things that you want to mention now about why that's not there? Because that was a big piece of feedback that we kept hearing.
Jeff, that's a really good point, and certainly. So while we did get the feedback and that people are really seeking these kinds of venues to add to the lifestyle in the community that don't really exist, those destination retail opportunities and hangouts for food and beverage, it doesn't mean that this facility needs to do it all. This is a catalytic opportunity to create traffic within the entire area. More doorbells and more wallets being infused into this development. Retail and restaurants, they want visibility to the road. And to have this, other than very convenient and specific targeted small retail opportunities that might be inside the venue, we'd like to see that the rest of the community, the rest of the pike, so to speak, really be the resource there for future retail and future beverage and food establishment.
Okay, great. Got it. Thank you. With that, let's turn it over to Lisa from North point to talk about the apartments and what that development might look like. So thank you very much for being here, Lisa. And Greg, thank you for that presentation. I really appreciate it. And we might circle back around during the Q&A with you. Go ahead, Lisa. Unmute. You got to unmute. Yeah, I know. We all do it.
Hi, thank you. Just real quick, just a brief background of me. My name is Lisa Skovic, and I'm a partner at North Point Group. North Point, we are predominantly apartment developers and mixed-use developers. And over the past 15 to 20 years, we have been in the central business district of Cincinnati and over the Rhine and in Covington, Kentucky. So I would say over the past 7 or 8 years, we've developed and invested over about $200 million. We have a couple of towers downtown. We have high-end apartments in downtown Cincinnati. We've done a lot in OTR with 3CDC in the beginning years of the revitalization of the neighborhood. We've done office space, retail space, and apartments and condos in OTR. Most recently, we finished up a development in Covington, Kentucky, right downtown. It's 110 market rate apartments, and that's where I was actually introduced to Delhi. They were looking around when they started doing their planning. They met with a consultant that does studies, mostly for developers like myself. So whenever we want to get into a neighborhood or a community, we'll go to a consultant to give us some background research just to make sure we're on tap with what we want to do. And so I've been conversing with Jack and his team for a year and a half now. And over the course of many iterations, fell in love with Delhi. I think I would say from a personal standpoint, I think one of the things that is a benefit to me is that I'm not from Cincinnati, so I don't have any background. I don't do east-west sides. I don't do any of that. So everything is the same to me. We as developers, I'd like to think that we just don't build apartments. We develop communities. Anyone can throw up a 3-story building and walk away, but we at North Point really develop communities, and there's a sense of community here. I noticed, I went to a couple of the first community meetings, and what I did notice, and I think Jeff had alluded to it at the beginning, was there was always over 300 people, and I would say that they were all ages. And you don't really see that a lot anymore, especially people coming to a community and caring what their community is doing. So what we saw in Delhi was a love for the community, that people love the community and they want to stay, but they may want to change their environment. So in working with Olivar and Jack, we've kind of slowly learned that, you know, this could very well be a multi-generational project. So it's not just college kids. It's young adults that maybe want to start a family but can't really afford a house right now, but want an apartment and kind of want to see if they like the community. And then when they go into an apartment, maybe in a year or 2 or 3, they can branch out and buy a house in Delhi. And in turn, the people who have been in Delhi their whole life and maybe are empty nesters, and they don't want the house anymore, but they want more convenience for their life, but they want to stay in the community that they love, maybe they come over. So there'll be a good mix of people in an apartment complex all living together. We did, I will say, the project we did in Covington was called Duvenick Square. And I will tell you, when we originally built it, I would have bet my money on that it would just be millennials. Just because of where it was located. It was right next to a brewery. It was right next to Covington Hotel. It was a hot new upcoming area. And our average age is 46. We have anywhere between 28 and 82 and everything in between. And for us as apartment owners, that's great because you don't get a lot of turns. You don't really want a lot of turns in the apartment world. And so people have a sense of community because you may have older generation that maybe their kids live out of town and they don't get to come and be with them a lot. So, but you still have those people in the apartment complex, and we would have what we like to do in our apartments, and there's not a lot of apartment guys that do this, but our leasing team, we make sure that we do resident meetings. So we'll have one maybe either once a month or twice a month, depending on the season, but we'll do Friendsgiving. We did Friendsgiving in our Covington thing, and me and all of our investors showed up. It was potluck, we all brought our stuff, and there was 80 people there. For 110 apartments, that's pretty good. And people just love being in a community setting, not just an apartment building, a community. So when Elevar kind of pivoted on the site plan, when they showed me, I was like, this is exactly what this community needs. And I absolutely love the fact of the health center, because I think it is a great partnership with apartments, first of all. And quite frankly, I love that Delhi Township offices are going to be on the same property, because there's a sense of ownership. So you gotta know your neighbors, and you gotta love your neighbors, and everybody will take care of everything. And the programming that'll be on this park, my office is across from Washington Park, and OTR was great, and it still is great, but Washington Park really was catalytic for everything, because that park brings in people who do not work or live in OTR. So you have a dog park, you have a kids area, you have yoga on the lawn, and then you can bring in food trucks, and it just can be a family day. You know, a lot of people in suburbia, they don't come down to downtown Cincinnati, which is shocking to me. But if you kind of think about it, they're like, well, what's down there? Well, you have a Washington Park, you have Smell Park. So I think what Elevar has built here is a community, and there is something for everybody there. So this is why North Point and our investors are very interested in this project. From an apartment standpoint, you know, we're at the beginning stages, so we're going to tweak a couple of things, but I would say from experience, we would do studios, 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. Not sure on the unit mix yet on how many of each. That'll evolve, because we'll do one thing and then we'll change it a little bit and keep going. And just if Jack can show some of the slides, just to give everybody just a kind of idea. This isn't exactly what we'll do, but I just wanted to kind of give you a taste of what we've done in the past. So this is Duveneck Square in Covington. So if you drive around, and please drive around, go look at it, go look at other apartment buildings. What we didn't want to do was be an apartment building that you could go to Westchester and everything looks the same. So we are really cognizant of design and flow. So these units, you'll see, this is what we call stick built. So it's 4 stories, it's built wood. But the windows that we have are very, very large. These typically aren't the windows that would go in a stick frame apartment building. But we really wanted natural sunlight to come into our apartments. It's very important to us. So, and what we do is here this is what we call luxury vinyl flooring. So we have LVT, and we put it throughout. And we do that in a majority of our apartments, because you know, some people just don't like carpet, and it's actually easier to maintain, and you can throw down an area rug, but we do it in all our apartments. What we also do, which it doesn't sound like a lot, but you typically wouldn't find in apartments, we have coat closets in the hallways, we have pantry closets, which is very unusual. Our bathrooms are, if we have a 2-bedroom, we'll have a double sink instead of a single sink. We do the ceiling fans in the bedrooms. We do walk-in closets. On this site, we'll have on-site storage, but quite frankly, when we do our closets, we pay a lot of attention to the closets and a lot of attention to the market where we're in, and we'll do walk-in closets, so you wouldn't necessarily always need extra storage for all your stuff. And we do little things like barn doors on the bedrooms. Now, again, when going through this, if people don't like the barn doors or want more of a privacy from their living to their bedroom, then we'll change it up. And that's where it's just the beginning stages now. We haven't gotten really into the demographics of the people yet to figure out what specs work and what specs don't work. But just to give you guys a little taste of what we've done thus far. Also, I just want to actually let you know, though, too, that North Point, we're a private developer. We have investors for all of our projects, but we, over the past 15 years, have done a lot of public-private partnerships. So we've partnered with 3CDC, City of Cincinnati, the Port Authority, Uptown Consortium, and Hamilton County Land Bank. So we are very well versed in working with public and private partnerships, which will bode well for working with Delhi.
And real quick question, Lisa, does
Yeah.
I think you've basically said this, having the rec center and the cultural center, that makes this project more likely to succeed on the apartment level? Is that fair? Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, the more that's on the site, the better, because it's, now what people are looking at are, everybody wanted urban core, downtown. Now cycle's kind of moving back out, it's cyclical, it's moving back out, but they want the urban, but in suburbia. So they want all the amenities that you can get downtown in their own community. So the more that you have within walking distance, the better.
Yeah. So what else? And my sense is that you're fairly confident about this project. You wouldn't have been tagging along with Jack for 18 months.
I would, yeah.
If you
He's
could help
fun
it.
and everything, but yeah. No.
What are some of the other elements that make you think that this, I know enough about Covington. There's a lot of great things about Covington. What about this location, this project, that gives you that confidence, other than the rec and the cultural piece?
I think the rec and the cultural piece is just the icing on the cake, quite frankly. I think it's the sense of community. You don't really see it a lot. It's not, it doesn't seem like Delhi is siloed. Where the location is on the Pike, everybody is always on the Pike. And I think Greg made a great point on, what? Right now, there's no retail in this project, but that's not the point. The point is make this project catalytic so then everything else on the Pike can benefit from it. That's what you want to do. Just like if people want to stay in the community, but they want to leave their house, they can come to an apartment and have that experience and have that lifestyle with all of the aggravations, but then open up a home for a new family to start.
Yeah. And but again, this seems so obvious, but I just want to be real clear. Does the market analysis show that Delhi needs this kind of product?
Yes. Yes, it does.
Yeah. Okay. I would assume, or else you wouldn't be here. But
I wouldn't be here if it didn't. Yeah.
I want to be very clear that you've looked at the market studies and there's a need. There's a big need.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, great. Awesome. Thank you, Lisa. Let's see, back to, well, now, Greg, do you have any thoughts following up with Lisa, or just I want to tie you in to see if anything she said brought up something for you when you look at the big picture?
Hey Jeff, this is Russ Dodd. Is it possible to take a pause and let some folks ask questions after Lisa's presentation?
Yeah, sure.
Or is
Let's
that,
do it.
I know you wanted to reserve questions to the end. I just didn't know where the end was, if it was by individual or at the total end.
Well, this is, I'm a big believer in breaking up presentations. So, and taking my lead from folks out there. So if you've got some questions, let's take some questions at this point. Just question and answer. I might cut it off after 5, 6, 7 minutes just to make sure we can get through everything and then come back to questions. But Russ, if you've got one, please give it to us now.
I do, and I'm going to try to keep my questions to Lisa's specific topic so we can get back on the presentation flow. So I get the apartment building being a gateway to the residential housing. Would your firm be the one that would orchestrate that on the journey, or is that something that would be left off to some other leadership in the township?
Do you mean would our firm develop the apartments?
No, look, I thought you indicated that the apartments would be a good gateway to people coming into the township. So therefore they would kind of stay in the apartments and it would be a gateway to housing to the rest of the township. Is that, did I hear you wrong?
No, I don't think you did, but let me clarify. So what I was saying was, what I heard from the community meetings when I went was there are the older generation that are in their houses in Delhi. And if given the opportunity and presented with a community that they could move out of their current home that they've been in and move into a new apartment complex so their lifestyle is made easier and they could have more experiences, that then opens up a home for a younger generation to start a family. And
Okay.
or
And so my question is, like, I got that. My
Okay.
question is, so who manages that philosophical journey? Because I get it that, you know, you have it as a place for transition. It could be transitioning into the township, could be transitioning out of the house, but I thought, you know, your point is it's not just an apartment complex. And so who manages that journey? Is that something left off to the township, or is that something that your firm stays in place and has a financial interest in doing? I'm just curious about how that would work. And if it's too early on in the thinking, that's fine too.
yeah, I think it's probably too early, but I think my internet had cut out on some of your question. But what I'll say it from a standpoint of what we're going to do. What we are planning on doing is working with the township, working with Elevar to develop this project and community. We develop the apartments. We will then own them and lease them and manage them. But outside of that, that's kind of where we stop. We don't really have any, we wouldn't have any position on working anything third party, anything outside of it. So we would just concentrate on developing our apartments, making sure it's cohesive with the rest of the project, and then leasing up our project.
And Russ,
I
maybe,
understand. So here's my, I'm not going to do concern, but here's my thought on that. And this is no disrespect, Lisa, it's just my thought, is that you kind of presented to us, this is a big idea around the whole complex and how it works well with the township, but then I kind of heard you say, but we own apartments. And so I think what we then as part of the township would just have to make sure that all of that knowledge and experience that you have, how does that transition over into an ongoing plan? That would be my thoughts on that. Ensuring that, candidly, if you would have said, hey, we have a financial interest in it, being that we're going to build other pieces of property that people can come in and out of, then I'd been like, oh, good, you're going to be around. But if you're building and you're going to take care of at least the initial, you know, call it social interest of the township, great. But then after that, we have to make sure that we can adequately lead that into the future. So you've got the catalyst for it. We just need to make sure we have the leadership in place to be able to continue on with that. And I'd be interested, Jack, from the others and Jeff, you know, like, so how are we going to do that? You know, where's it in the plan to do that? And my 2 cents on it is, and I really want to know about the dollars of it. You know, we can all look across our country and see these great ideas that, you know, get taxed and they have revenue generating built into them. And it's like, eventually, you know, there's a certain percentage of it that does or does not take place. And I just want to know, like, you know, how does this all work out financially to include the apartment complex?
let's, and I took some notes on that, Russ, so the points, I've got it tracked, I've got it noted. And I think that just a very broad generic answer is that that's on the township, right? That's part of the planning work that the township has to do. And my guess is that that would be part of Greg DeLong's work to look at development and look at the housing needs and continue to do housing studies and tie it back into this development. But it's noted that the important point I think you're making is that there's got to be a transition, or somebody's got to be managing the entire vision for housing across the entire township if this project's going to have the biggest impact it can get. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And when I said manage it, being that I'm really interested in both financially and as well as leadership. Like, you know, is there going to be a body that's created, and that's what their mission in life is. Every day they go to work on the success of this thing moving forward, because then you can accomplish your financial goals.
Yep, I got it. Okay, great. Does anybody else, thank you very much, Fred. Anybody else have any, just some questions now about the apartments, just since we are in that flow right now. And if you do, raise your hand, and if there's competing folks, I can call on one, but Ed, thank you. Make sure you unmute yourself.
I think I'm unmuted. Am I unmuted?
Marty, is that Marty?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, Marty, you go first, and then Ed, I saw you wave your hand, right? When Marty's done, make sure you have yourself unmuted, and then Ed Capel, you'll be next. Go ahead, Marty.
Okay, just a couple of questions. Are these apartments going to be pet friendly? And how long of a lease are you going to hold on the apartments? Are you going to lease out 12 months, 24 months?
Great question. So pet friendly always. Leases, I mean, we typically do 12-month leases, depending on the apartment and the market and the timing of stuff. If people needed a shorter term lease, we typically don't like to do 6 months, but that's not saying that we wouldn't do 6 months. We've done 8 months before, but typically we'll do 12 months, and we usually don't go out past 12 months. It's just kind of typical in the apartment world. You typically don't do that, but 12 months at the most, and then we can just renew after the 12 months.
Okay. And then one last question.
Yeah.
On that. So if you have say a 1-bedroom studio, how many people do you allow to be in that apartment or on that lease? And then if you have a 2-bedroom, how many people do you allow to be in that?
Great question. So the studio, you can have up to 2 people. A 1-bedroom, you can have up to 2 people. It all actually is dependent on closets and windows. So your 2-bedroom, you can have typically up to 4 people, because 2 people can be in a 2-bedroom, in an actual 1-bedroom. So you wouldn't really, like our studio apartments, you could put 2 people in it. We wouldn't rent to 3 people. And then, 1-bedroom, you couldn't put a family of 4 in a 1-bedroom.
Okay.
Yeah. Real quick, a note, Greg, if I'm right, there's in the detailed plans, there's a dog park, small dog park that would be part of the outside piece. So it's designed to be people like dog parks, right? So, okay.
Yes.
Ed Cap, thank you, Marty. Ed Capel, do you have something? Yeah, go ahead.
Do you have a square foot per unit and a price per unit?
And let's do 2 things. Jack, if you could mute everybody, mute everybody, because there's some. Now, Ed, if you can unmute yourself again, now we've lost, but make sure you speak up, sir, because it's a little tough to hear.
Okay, so first of all, do we have square footage per unit in mind and what the cost is per unit? Then the next question would be, is North Group going to act as their own rental agent? Then I ask you, if you have 226 apartments, how many parking spaces for them, and subtract that from 687, and what does that leave for the general population that want to come in for activities? That's enough for now.
Great, thanks, Ed.
So your first question, I believe, was, do we know the square footages and how much? So we don't have anything set in stone, but I'll be happy to give you a ballpark just based on some other projects that we've done. Now we have to kind of pinpoint this market itself. So again, just remember that this is a range.
Okay.
So we'll do studios. So studios 1s and 2s. So we'll be anywhere between about 500 square feet to maybe 1,200, 1,300 square feet. And our price range, so we typically go by a per square foot price, but we'd probably like to average here, I'd say maybe $140 to $150 a square foot. So given that, I'd say anywhere between 900 and let's say 1,500 a month. And again, that's just ballpark numbers right now, but that's what I would probably foresee it being. Your second question was
The agent, would you be the rental agent?
Oh yeah, yep.
Okay.
And then third
Parking.
question, I think maybe for Greg a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Greg, to sharpen the question, is there enough parking to handle the apartments and everything else? In other words, are the apartments taking up too much parking space and it's going to mess up the rest of the stuff? What
No.
say thee?
Right, this does not work unless you do a healthy traffic and parking analysis for each of the individual uses so that they have adequate parking for each. 1.4 is the average right now that we're using for our apartment complex. That is separate parking count from what Mike Combs will need for the rec center, which is based on a percentage of their membership. And Mike, I want to say that's 20% is the number that we've allocated there. Then we have event-related and day-long activities spread out throughout the length of the business day and evening for the cultural center, which is additive to that. And then a book of business that the township will have for walk-in traffic and meetings, et cetera, at the administration level. That's how we get to the total of 687 plus the area in the commons area for convenience, quick in, quick out access. So that's where that total number comes from. It's adding it for the individual uses.
Do you feel good, Greg? Do you feel good about the number, the whole parking picture? Do you feel confident that it's enough?
We do, yeah. Of course, we hope to stress that, right? Wouldn't that be a great idea, great problem to have that we had events that began to stress that out and that became a problem for us. But initially, all of those uses can be used simultaneously.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Any other big concerns or questions, especially questions about?
I have a question on the parking. So thanks, Ed, for sponsoring that. The other successes that you've had, Lisa, were those successes where called people moving out of their homes and going into apartments? Were those successes with outdoor parking and indoor parking? I'm just wondering because I think that could be a good concern of people moving from a garage facility that they live in to an outdoor parking facility that they live in.
Fair question.
I'm curious about your successes, and are there any thoughts about having some kind of indoor garage facility for the apartment?
So all the stuff that we've done downtown Cincinnati has actually been built on top of a city garage. So the city has built a garage and then has given us the air rights to build apartments above. So then our residents would pay market rate and they are in the garage. Our project in Covington, however, so we own 4.5 acres, but it's across the street from each other. So there's 2.5 acres on one side of the street and 2.5 acres on the other side of the street. The one side just has the apartments and then those residents park on surface lot. And none of them has ever had an issue with it because it's one, they've moved to the urban core. So they are appreciative and that they have parking. And two, it's close. If it was like a block and a half away, like if these guys presented something like they're going to have to cross Delhi Pike and park, I would say absolutely not. But since it's so close, it's not a problem for me. We just finished building a tower downtown. It's 124 units, and it just came online, which is not the greatest time to come online because of everything happening with COVID. And we already have 40 leases, and we have 0 parking, 0. Now they can go park in a garage a block away, and they're willing to do it because of convenience of other stuff. But since the parking is right outside our apartments, that's not an issue for us.
Okay, I would push back against that. I gotta say, we've been looking for condos around the city for years now, and parking is the first criteria for us.
Right.
Indoor
Saying
park.
covered parking.
We keep indoor cover. We keep our cars in the garage. So
Right.
we're used to not coming out in heat,
Sure.
and we're used to not coming out in cold.
Right.
And so, do we decrease the attractiveness? And maybe it's, not clientele that are moving from garage facilities anyway. So.
Yeah. Well, Lisa, and I guess that's the ultimate question. Do you think that not having a garage will keep you from renting these to whomever that market would be?
No.
Yeah, right. So you're going to fill them whether there's a garage, and a garage is insanely expensive and would change the dynamics to everything for you, or would cost the township a fortune. Okay,
Yeah.
that was a great question, Russ. I appreciate it. I want to make sure that we get through everything before we come back to questions. So let's keep writing down your questions for the end. But I want to turn to Mike Combs, right? Am I right? To make, and if Jack, if you could remute everybody, because I'm hearing more chatter, static. So if you could remute everybody, and then Mike, you'll have to unmute. And Mike is from Midtown. We have North Point, we have Midtown Health, and he's the recreation guru on the project. So Mike, take it away for us. And you can share your screen whenever you're ready.
Let me get this up. All right. Can everybody hear me? Okay, good. So my name is Mike Combs. I'm the Vice President of Operations for Midtown. And we have now 32 clubs across the country, and actually one in Montreal, Canada. We have 8 clubs that we own outright, and we have 24 clubs that we manage and operate for other entities such as park districts and health systems and corporations and that type of thing. So that's a little bit about Midtown Health. We're mostly in the Midwest, Cincinnati, Detroit, and Chicago. And so we're very Midwest oriented, although we do have the club in Montreal and one in Atlanta, one in Texas, and one in Florida, but mainly the Midwest. So the very first slide there is, it talks about building a more active and vibrant Delhi Township. And I know from all the public interest sessions that activities is what we kept hearing. So we want to make sure that when we build this fitness and recreation center, that it's all about having activity and being vibrant. Like Lisa talked about, making it a community. And so our goals from the Fit and Recreation Center is to be the very best in fitness, recreation, and entertainment. We don't want this to be mediocre. We don't want this just to be good. We want it to be great. We're going to blend today's needs for fitness and wellness and recreation, and also tomorrow's needs. And you'll see some of those examples in our picture. We want to be very cutting edge. We want to be hip. We want to be cool. And so we show you some of the things that we've been doing at our clubs that would be included in this fitness and recreation center. We're all about all ages and all fitness levels. One of the things that has been a negative to me in the fitness industry has been those clubs that only attract the 20% of the population that actually work out. We want our clubs to be for people that are looking to lose weight, to get more fit, people with disabilities, people who have bad knees, bad backs, a place that they can come and get fit. And you'll see in our clubs, we have everything from babies in our clubs to 100-year-olds. And that's truth. We actually do have a few octogenarians, however you say that word, in our clubs. A lot of people have talked about this unique and festive outdoor environment. We would be responsible for programming that at a lot of our clubs. We have some great outdoor environments. And so we don't want it just to be a place, although it will be a place, great place to hang out. We also want to program it. You know, somebody mentioned food trucks and yoga on the lawn, and you know, we could have summer camps out there with kids and all sorts of programs. We want it to be a partnership with schools. We want to mesh the recreational aspect with the learning aspect. And very important to us and to the township, of course, is that this be something that's financially sustainable, that can pay for itself, plus make a bit of a profit so that we can put back money into the project so that we always keep on the cutting edge. First slide there is, you know, we want this facility to make a splash. This is a picture of the West Claremont Healthplex on the east side of town. And Elevar was the designer here, and we're managing the club, and it's just been a huge success. And as you can see, that's just a spectacular setting, and what I talked about is being first class and state of the art. We want to stretch your limits. Like I said, we want a facility that's takes care of today, but also tomorrow. And as you can see, you know, that's a studio that I don't think you will see in most clubs in the Cincinnati area. We really want it to be cool and unique and something where it's really an attraction. It's a magnet for the people in the apartments, also people in the community.
Can I talk? I'm sorry, Mike,
Yeah.
Can I ask you a quick question about that last slide?
Sure.
Those kinds of larger spaces, obviously you guys will have ideas and will put stuff in there. Are those spaces, those rec spaces, open to outside vendors? You know, a yoga teacher or a Pilates teacher that could use these spaces, or a Zumba teacher?
Well, yeah, generally we employ all the instructors from a liability standpoint.
Oh, okay.
Now, we can rent and lease those. You know, we would obviously have to have all the waivers signed and that type of stuff. So it could be, but generally we try to have those people on our payroll and employees of Midtown, because we take the risk those employees, and that usually protects the township too. As you can imagine, health clubs they bring about a whole different litany of you know, injuries and different things that can happen, and we manage that very well, and it helps to keep the township insulated.
Do you do market studies that help you know how to program those spaces for the area around the specific club you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
We do very in-depth marketing studies. A little later in the presentation, I'm going to do a very general one that we've done, but we also parse it down into income groups and age groups so that we can, you know, pretty much know what any particular group, you know, something like this is generally more for the younger people, you know, more of the millennials, you know, but you'll see in the next slide, we also take care of the senior market too, like Lisa was talking about. We're very similar to her in that, you know, our median age is probably about that, right around 50 also.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sure. So here's a picture. You know, we like to be about changing lives. We don't want to just have a fitness and recreation center that doesn't impact people. You know, this is a picture of a member at our West Claremont Club, and she has lost 100 pounds. You know, we have stories like that right and left of people who have lost weight, or people that were dealing with a disability and they were able to go in there and to improve upon that. So we want this to be a facility that for the Delhi Township residents will actually change their life if they are needing that. We want people to get stronger. You know, we have cardio equipment. It's not in this presentation, I'm sorry, because it's kind of a given, but we have all the ellipticals and the treadmills and the bikes and all the latest equipment. But what's really the rage today is functional equipment. You know, you see a boxing bag there. And once again, I think this is something that you generally don't see in most fitness and recreation centers that are older models. We want people to move with us. Studios is a big area. We showed you that one where people were stretching their limits, but we also have very much the traditional classes too for people to get up and move and not only move but have fun while they're doing it. And also, we're all about families. This is obviously a picture before social distancing, but this is very important to note. You saw that beginning picture of the beautiful lap pool and competitive pool for high schools and colleges to be able to compete in. But then we also have a separate pool right adjacent to the lap pool where we call it a warm water pool. We can put family activities in there. We can put swim lessons in there. We put water fitness classes in there. We've had Easter egg hunts where we've had floating Easter eggs and the kids go get it. We actually had 200 people for that, not at all the same time. We had people book different times throughout the day. But we really want this to be, people a sense of community for families too. Also, a big thing today is, stress is so big in our society, and anxiety and those types of things. And people want a place where they can relax and de-stress. And once again, if you went over to our West Claremont facility, Elevar has put in a colored floor and wanted to make this a different kind of area where you can relax, not just holding a yoga class in a conference room. It's a yoga class in a boutique quality atmosphere. I told Jeff earlier we would show kind of a high level to show you that we can attract the membership. And we go very much more in depth in this, but this is just something to show you. We take the area participants and we look at an 8-minute drive time, okay? Because most people, the primary market's gonna be an 8-minute drive time. You get some people in the secondary market, which is from 8 to 12-minute drive time, but pretty much your core is gonna be that 8-minute drive time. And so you see the population there. We do an age adjustment, even though we do have all sorts of ages. We try to take it into that core age, which is 21 to 74. So you see that knocks out about 17,000 people. Then we do an industry penetration. Even though we hope to attract the non-exercisers, we really just say, hey, realistically, we're gonna get about 20% of the population. We take in the competition factor, which, to be honest with you, there's not a whole lot of competition, quality competition in this area. A lot of the facilities are older or one-dimensional. And we still, though, to be conservative, we put in the maximum that we use, which is a 65% competition factor. I actually think it'll be much less than that. And then we come up with our potential members, which is right around 2,000 members, a little bit more. And we put together a pro forma that is based on being able to attract 2,100 memberships. And I talked about that pro forma, and we talked at the beginning how financial sustainability is so key to us and to the township. And based on our pro forma, and we've done lots of these pro formas, and if you talk to the people at West Claremont, we've exceeded the pro forma in every area. But we look at this, it would break even 14 months. You say to me, okay, Mike, what if we don't get 2,100 memberships? What if we don't for some reason? We actually could break even at about half of that, about 1,100. In year 2, we generate 81K in net operating income. And by 5 years, when we get to maturity, if we build up to that 2,100 memberships, which we're confident of, it would have a profit of 580K. Membership dues by year 5 would be nearly 2 million. And then the other thing to factor in is we have a lot of good ancillary revenue sources from natatorium rental, swim lessons, personal training, and all sorts of other programs. So I want to thank you for the opportunity, and we absolutely look forward to your thoughts. And I don't know if Jeff wants to do it now or at the end.
Yeah, let's wait. I do have one question, though. Be real clear about how you guys get paid and where the net income goes.
Right, okay, so we get a base management fee, and depending on the client, we can do it either way they want. Either we can just get a base amount per month that we're paid, or we can take a lesser amount and then get a percentage of any net income. Okay, we leave it up to the vendor. If we do the part where we get a percentage, obviously that puts more of our fee at stake. But all of the money that's generated, all the net operating income goes to Delhi Township, and they decide how that's spent.
Okay, got it. Awesome, thank you.
Sure.
Great, thanks,
Thank
Mike.
you.
And let's hold to the end. I want to make sure we get through everything, especially the financial piece. So stick around with us, Mike. Thank you very much for all of that. So now let's, if you can unshare your screen, Mike,
Yep.
and we're going to go back to Greg Otis for Greg and Jack are going to tag team on how does all this get paid for, the whole project writ large. We know what's going to happen with Midtown internally. We know how the apartments are going to get built and how that works, but let's look at the big picture financially. So Greg, I think you're sharing some slides now.
I'm sorry, a little trouble here unsharing.
Stop sharing at the top.
At the
Stop
top.
share.
Okay, I have stop video. Would that be?
No. At the top of your screen, it should say stop share right in the middle.
It says new share. Would that be it? Oh, I see it. I'm sorry. There we go. Sorry, Jack.
Okay, Greg, you're up. Unmute. You got to unmute, Greg.
There we go.
Awesome.
Slowly but surely we'll get there. All right, so last we left you, and this will satiate Russ's question about how do the dollars and cents work. And I'm going to employ Jack here a little bit from the township's perspective, but start by saying that we have two primary sources of income, the two that we've just referred to. On the left here, you see the Recreation Center as a third-party operator and driving programs by way of the public membership. As Mike had suggested, in year 4, we generate about $580,000 of net revenue that comes from the dollars from the membership, and then after expenses is a spillover source as well. On the apartment side, then Lisa and her team make an investment, a private investment in the development of the residential component, to which then the township puts an overlay, a tax increment financing overlay on the property in order to generate revenues. I'll let Jack get into the specifics here in some detail. So let's go to the next slide. So Jack, go ahead and take it away on these two fronts if you wish.
Sure. And just to be clear on.
Go back one slide, Greg. Yeah, go back to the prior slide, I think.
No?
No, sorry, my bad.
Hey,
Sorry.
me and Greg got this covered, all right?
Yeah. Sorry.
So one of the things I point out as we walk through this, we've engaged Lisa Skovic. We got introduced to her and liked what their product was, liked how they looked at things, but we would still have to finalize anything with North Point. The same way with Mike Combs and Midtown Health. We liked what they said, we liked how they analyzed things. So all of these potential partners are still to be locked in, but we've dove deeper on a lot of the fronts we talked about last fall. And one of those was definitely the cost of things. And I was honestly very nervous how a fitness center would pencil out. And so one of the things I'll walk through at a pretty high level, but there's their analysis behind a fitness center over 5 years. So the first year, it actually loses a little bit operating versus or income versus expense. The second year, as Mike said, in month 14, they overcome the cost per month and actually make $80,000 for the year. By the time you get out to a mature 5th year, the center's actually pulling in that operating income of $580,000. Obviously, these are projected numbers, anything we do as far as, Greg, if you want to go to the next slide, as the numbers are analyzed and we're looking at how this works financially, we're keeping a cushion. And I'm not throwing it to Andy Brosart, but Andy is a public finance expert. He's done this for, I think, as long as I have, about 20-something years. And he looked at the tax generation that would be created on the site from a TIF and putting all of that into a fund to pay for the debt that would have to be issued. So if the private investment is at $33 million, that would generate $1,067,000. If in year 5, the fitness center is at $580,000, and again, we go to that mature year 5 because we look at that for the duration, not the first few years building up. That's a total annual debt service amount of $1.647 million. If the investment that we make in the project, so the construction cost, you know, for the site and for infrastructure and for everything not apartments or private, that is estimated at $1.275 million. So taking that away from the $1.647, we're left with about $371,000 uncommitted. So that's that cushion. So that's kind of the high level finance picture from just the project. And I would point out, we're talking about what's on site. We're not talking about going off site. This is internal to itself. The other piece is the school. We're looking for the school to partner. We haven't talked about that part yet, but we would ask in return for use of a pool, and a pool which is a need of theirs, and some pre-K classrooms in Delhi, which is a need, that then we could keep their TIF dollars on site to help, you know, pay for that ongoing debt service.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. That's exactly right. So the right indicates then what is typical in tax increment financing is a portion of the revenues that are generated from the increased value of the property, the 1.07 million. A portion of that goes to the township, while another portion is earmarked to the district. So that we did reach out to Oak Hills, and we did talk about the capital needs that the district has. And the two areas of primary capital concern were the pool, the competitive pool. As we all know in our community, that is only a 4-lane pool in its current configuration, and needs some help. As well, the early childhood development programs within the elementary schools need to be augmented. So within the rec center, the pool, the competitive pool that Mike operates, a portion of that will be used by the district and other folks that are looking for a competitive venue for rental and use. As well, the classrooms can support that early development. So it does require a dialogue and an agreement between the township and the school district that their portion of the TIF stay in the development. And for the pleasure of the use of those facilities, they don't have to come up with that. So that's new net value to the district, and it creates opportunities and space in the elementary schools. So those two sources of revenue, the TIF and the private development, add up to the $25 million for a 30-year construction bond that supports the development of the rec center itself, the cultural center, the township offices, and the balance is then for the site development costs in preparation of the site, the creation of the landscape zones, the infrastructure that's necessary to support these pad sites, pad-ready sites. The partnership with the district stays within the development and supports, again, the $25 million amortization of the note. And as well, because this infrastructure has then generated the opportunities for its use that Mike referred to and others, for other kinds of additional revenues, for summer camps, for festivals, for private rentals, markets that might be in the facility that could set up and add to the enjoyment, the use, and the flexibility of the development overall. There are tremendous opportunities for additional revenues. And with that, Jeff, I'll turn it back over to you, and we can continue this conversation with input from others. I'm happy to leave this up if it is helpful to answer any questions that folks might have.
Thanks, thanks, Jack, for asking me. We all do it. We all start talking on mute. So I do want to go to Andrew. Just this is what you do for a living. You've been doing it for quite a while. Why are you confident in these numbers around the taxes? What gives you confidence in that?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Just by way of background for a little bit more detail, what we do, we are an independent municipal advisory firm. So we get engaged in projects to look at the financing viability, the various ways financing can occur. And then when it comes to development projects of this nature, we dive deep into the TIF projections and then model that worst case, best case scenarios just to see where the project shakes out at. To your question about the comfort we have relative to the tax projections to support the debt service, a lot of that comes from the project, obviously, and then we look at comparables that are out there in the marketplace all across the greater Cincinnati area. And that's evolving right now in terms of the value that we're looking at, because it's important to note a $40 million construction cost isn't always valued that way by the county auditor. So we got to be careful and conservative, make sure that we nail that down the right way and how it's going to be assessed. And then working with the school district to work out the TIF arrangement. Given what we've seen here, and there's been multiple units similar to this across the county, we feel pretty good about the valuation that we're using associated with this project.
Okay. Your audio cut out a little bit. And I think what you were trying to say is that the county auditor does not always assign a value equal to how much you spend to do the development. And so you're cautious about that. You've included that.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, great. Any other thoughts that you've got, Andrew? And we'll if there are questions come back, I know you're available, but anything else that you want to add?
Yeah, just in terms of when we looked at the analysis, we tend to take a conservative viewpoint of it. So for example, the revenues from the operations, the net revenues, in our model, we discounted that 75% to a 75% level. Interest rates, obviously right now is a great time to borrow. We're using, I think, 3.25 in terms of a 30-year borrowing rate, and right now that's at 2.5. So there's a lot of areas that we have. We want to be conservative because we're not right there yet to do the bond borrowing, so we want to be cautious with that. But those are other areas that are important.
Okay, so time does matter, right? You don't want to.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Great. Awesome. Okay, so now we're just going to open it up to everybody, and you should all be on mute. So just so I can call on folks, I don't like the little electronic hands. Just wave your hand. And Christy, thank you very much. And be ready. And if you want to put your hand up while she's talking, then I'll point and know I've got you, and then have yourself unmuted so that we're ready to go right to you. So Christy, thank you very much. You're up.
I just have a super quick question. I apologize if you answered it already. I had to leave for a minute. Just timeline. Where are you looking at for completion?
This might be for Jack.
Well, if things keep moving forward at a reasonable pace, it wouldn't be unforeseen to break ground in April. The most important piece is, Lisa and their group really being ready to move forward, because that's one piece we don't control. So if there's not a stumble or some reason to slow down, April, and I think 18 months is the projected build out. So that would give you the end of the following year, 2022. That's if everything works well.
Okay, great. Lisa, do you have any thoughts about, since Jack referenced your end of it, about that timeline?
I mean, that would work for us. We would be ready to do it in April. Just from an apartment standpoint, 226 units would, obviously depending on the construction logistics because of connections to the health center and or cultural center, just 226 units, 4 stories, stick built, 2 or 3 different buildings may take us anywhere, but I'd give us 14 to 17 months.
Okay. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Christy, thanks for that question. Other folks, again, just by quick show of hands, or you, yeah, Peggy and then Ed. Yeah, go ahead, Peggy. And make sure you unmute yourself. And Ed, if you can have your unmute ready, because we all forget.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Peggy.
So the apartment buildings, will they have an elevator there? 4 stories for old people, kind of.
Yep.
Oh, good. Okay, that's all I wanted. Thank you.
Awesome. Simple enough. Ed.
Yeah, as Jack can imagine, I've got a few questions.
Ed, can you sit a little closer to your microphone so we can hear you?
The Remke site used to generate about 144K a year for operating monies, and now it'll be TIF. So how do we pay for all those new operating expenses that are going to come through to cover the new area that Delhi's taking care of?
Let's take that one. Well, let's take them one at a time, because these might be that's a sophisticated question. So Greg, Jack, who's the right person? Just Jack, go ahead.
Well, Ed is referencing our ongoing discussion about TIFs. So I understand we have a philosophical difference on TIFs, but I think what folks have to realize, there's nothing in the Remke building today, and that's not by our choice. That's the way the building went. So there will be zero value on the property, so it'll zero out in value. We'll start from ground zero. So to ask what of the current taxes, I mean, that's changing regardless of what we do. The Remke went out, the oldies went out, so we're trying to reinvigorate the site. And so this will, Ed, we are going to use the TIF that is created on the site from the apartments, the private development, to help fund this thing and make it work. What happens in the meantime is we're pushing other things along Delhi Pike as this happens. Now, the vision I read at the beginning is a vision for, into the future, Delhi Pike transforming, and this is one push that we can do to help raise the levels elsewhere. So I would say you're going to see more value come through. This site would be TIF, so we'd get the TIF. I don't know if that answered your question, but we're working with, a zero starting ground.
Now, Jack, what I'm asking is this new development will require more township services than it does now. And how do we pay for those?
Well, I don't.
EMT run, more parking lots to plow.
Yeah, well, the site would maintain itself. So as far as the cost for those services like maintenance, police, fire, I would say is somewhat negligible. It's not going to generate enough activity to cause us to have to add staff. I mean, that's able to be handled now. Obviously, as activity increases, your revenue is going to increase, and therefore we'll have to adjust, if staffing needs to be added. Police and fire is the bigger concern, and I don't think we anticipate that needing to grow any from this particular development.
And so, Jack, you're saying that the service, the site itself, any maintenance to keep the site nice or up to par, that is all going to come out of the revenue generated by the site. You're not going to have to take any general fund dollars and put it into maintenance of the site.
Correct. You have the rec center, or fitness center, which will have its own operating expenses that are being paid for from its membership, which would include, something towards the parking. Whatever we do with the private component on the site, there will be some agreement that they're paying towards maintenance of the site as well. So those costs will be covered with whatever arrangements we have on the site and with the different uses.
Okay, so what happened to Insight? Isn't that the fitness center that's currently in the end of the building?
What was
Verve.
it? It was called something before. It's now Verve Fit.
Verve.
Verve Fit, we have, I'm going to tell you, Ed, we have bent over backwards to make sure we accommodated them, and they are moving to a space next to Wishbone. And I think in every other scenario, they would have had to close up shop, but we've worked with them. We're actually not collecting any rent from them other than common area maintenance for this year because they had a significant increase coming in December. So actually they're staying, they're going down next to Wishbone, and as soon as they can finish that, which is probably the beginning to middle of September.
So the following question is for Lisa. I'm presuming that North Point's going to own the buildings. And if they own the buildings, and after so many years the depreciation goes down, are you going to stay, or once the profit dries up, are you going to leave? Sell the building?
Lisa?
I think she's frozen.
Yeah, right. She's frozen. Well, she is probably not. Yeah. She might have just popped back in.
No, I think she's logging out and getting
No,
back.
she's logging out and coming back in. So let's, yeah.
So Ed, one of the things we find of value right now is leasing that ground to the apartment builder so that we can get certain commitments we couldn't get otherwise. So there'd be a long-term lease. That seems to be a reasonable way to approach it. It's still just as taxable as if they own the ground. But as far as the value and depreciation, Lisa can answer that now. She's
okay. Well, when you say lease, Delhi's going to own the building and lease it to North Point?
We would own the ground, as far as I know. Again, that's to be worked out, but some of the folks involved think that works cleaner than trying to have them own the actual ground.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I want to know if North Point will stay when the depreciation no longer exceeds the income.
I will talk about our experiences thus far. Depending on who our partners are on this project, we have different investors for different projects. The majority of our projects, we are considered long-term hold developers. So like all the stuff that we have downtown, our partners, we hold it because we're all part of the community that have been in here for a very long time. So I wouldn't see how this would be any different.
Okay, great, fair enough. Ed, do you have any questions at this point?
Well, I agree with, I guess it was Marty. I've just been selling a condo for a cousin, and everybody that comes through says, you got 2-car garage? We want to move out of our old house, but we got 3 or 4 cars.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Especially
yeah, and that's a fair concern. But Lisa, yeah,
so
she feels like it's
Delhi will give you money to build a 2-car garage, vertically 2-floor garage.
Oh, yeah. I'll let Lisa answer that.
I didn't hear it.
Do you want Delhi to build you a 2-story garage under the apartments?
Or next to them?
Delhi doesn't want to build me a 2-story garage.
No.
Garages are extremely expensive. It won't make any financial sense for anybody.
Yeah. Well, the bottom line is that Lisa thinks they can rent these things without parking, without covered garage parking. So
I do.
I've heard.
yeah. Okay, great. Other questions? Russ, are you? Okay, go ahead, Russ. Wait, we can't hear you. You're not on mute from Zoom, but we can't hear you.
Yeah, I just want to make comment on my concern when Lisa said, they own the whole thing and to include all of the profits and losses. Then my concern about a garage kind of went away. I mean, if they, can't rent, then it sounds like that's really up to their future projections. And, the township obviously would lose revenue from a tax standpoint, but I do have a question though. So am I correct to assume that the administrative offices component of the complex is going to be from other offices being vacated? Is that correct?
The component, so this we started looking at our facilities in 2018. So one of the things we looked at was consolidating. There's a park component with offices, there's a community development component which includes zoning, and then there's the admin. So this would include those three which have offices. We have trustee meetings, we have zoning board meetings, we have zoning commission meetings. So one of the values we see, Russ, is being able to have those and share meeting spaces or bigger meeting spaces. So we have that efficiency. So we would leave this building and the police would probably, utilize our site here at the admin building.
So just for clarity then, make sure I understand it right. Other administrative buildings will not be vacated based upon this plan. Is that correct? I mean, there will be some type of presence in those existing buildings.
Well, we have our current administration building, yes, and it would be reoccupied, and community development and parks would come out of the main firehouse where the fire department is, and they use some office space. But if you
Okay, so no vacancies. I just wanted to get at,
Right.
What was the plan for the vacancies,
Yes.
but it sounds like there's no vacancies.
That's correct.
Okay, good enough.
Okay, great. Great. Thank you, Russ. And we can come back. Ginny, thank you for putting your hand up, and you're up.
Hi. My question is, I've heard about parking, I've heard about apartments, I've heard about recreation. I have not heard you talk about the cultural center, who's going to manage it, what kind of income it's going to bring, what's going to be available in it, and who are the demographics that will use it.
Awesome question. Who's the right person on that one? Jack?
I'll start, and Mike could jump in, but one of the things, Ginny, we got a lot of feedback on was cultural opportunities, whether it's art class, cooking class. And so Elevar kind of took the lead on saying, you could create these spaces that could be compatible and not competing. So Midtown Health or whomever is managing that center, we would look to have them be the scheduler and deciding or helping us decide what programming would happen. Certainly, if we want certain programming to happen, we would say, let's have a concert there because it's our property. But they would be the schedulers and drivers of what would be happening in those spaces. One of the neat things that I think we can have happen is things could play off of each other. If you have the classrooms there, the kids or schools could use some of those spaces for something beyond just class that morning. We have an auditorium shown. That auditorium could be used by different groups. So as far as income, there would be certainly cost to do some of these. And then I would think we would be throwing some things out there as just opportunities, kind of like you look at Washington Park and what they're doing. So we'd look to have some free things go on, whether it's food trucks or a concert or a movie night.
That sounds like it's all, basically you're talking about the outdoor. I'm thinking more about the classroom settings. Are the classrooms going to be equipped with any kind of equipment? Are they going to have tables and chairs conducive to teaching classes such as sewing or quilting or things are culture? Will there be music lessons offered? Will there be a piano? How will that building itself be staffed and equipped?
Yeah, Jenny, with a lot of our facilities that we manage, it's multi-use, and we have a lot of space that we program from a cultural aspect. And so we do a lot of lifelong learning classes, like you said, quilting and those types of things. We make sure that each of those spaces, are built in a way that would accommodate those. We would also want to do various arts, and crafts type of settings. So we'll make sure that those are designed in such a way that we could do the arts and crafts. I've seen some of the early designs that Jack showed me. We would have an area where we could have concerts, but then at the same time, we could roll back the seating, and then you could do like a wedding or a special event in there. So it's all a matter of us making sure we kind of see what kind of activities we would have in there, and getting great input from people like you, that the classes we want, and just make sure then that it's designed so those activities can take place.
Okay, thanks. I come from a background of 27 years of a professional recreation director. I ran Westwood Town Hall and Dunham Recreation Complexes. And I'm familiar with what this area, the demographics of our area, and the kind of things that are needed as far as art classes. I've taught art at the Mount. I've been on their staff. I'm just curious as to, when you have these, you're talking these nice big rooms, but big rooms and even chairs and tables, there's still so much more that needs to equip an art room or an art center or a sewing room, you know, sewing machines. That's the kind of thing that I'm kind of particularly aware of, that it's very hard. I ran buildings that had beautiful spaces, but we took, you know, we had to work on a shoestring, and we had to, for every piece of equipment we ever got. And if we're going to talk about a state-of-the-art cultural center, I need included.
Well, it sounds like you would be a great person for us to get involved with, you know, with your background. And you know, it's just like when we design the fitness centers, we talk to our instructors, you know, what do you need, rather than just having a space, you know, what do you need to be able to teach your class? And it's the same thing with the arts classes. So I would love to get your contact information, and because I think you'd be a great resource for us.
Let me make that's a great question, Jenny. Because another big chunk of feedback was folks listed all kinds of different things like you're talking about, Ginny, things they would want to do in a cultural space. And I heard Mike say that Midtown would listen to the community and would do some of their own programming. My question to you, Mike, is, I think this is true, that the community will be able to say, well, I want to rent at a very reasonable price. Can I rent that space for my own art class, or for my own, that doesn't get programmed through you, they're just using the space? Will that be available?
Yes, especially like you had asked before about the fitness center, not so much in the fitness center, but the cultural center. Absolutely.
Yeah, right. Okay, right. In the cultural center, I think that's what Ginny was getting at.
Right.
Especially that space. And then the other thing I just want to say generally to Ginny and everybody else, the residents, we are not, planning is a big funnel, right? The last time we asked you, what do you want in this space? Now we're down a little further. We're presenting a more clear version. Well, when you get down to programming and I think that was a great question, what infrastructure needs to be in those spaces so that the community can use it? That's the next level of community input that Midtown and I'd be certainly willing to help with, so that we know exactly what's got to be in there when we do the build out, rather than realize later what those uses need to be. And we've got a list of that, but we need to actually start pinning it down now that this stuff is getting put in real detail. But does that make sense, Jenny?
Yes, it does. And Mike, I'd be happy to give input or help in any way. And the township has all my information.
That would be fantastic. I'll reach out to Jack and get that. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Jenny. Other thoughts, questions, concerns?
Michelle,
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, Michelle, yes.
So I know you said that the planning of like the Midtown Health would be like further on, but just like we had talked about, like you've got those individual things or just like the yoga and stuff like that. Would there be like group activities as far as like basketball leagues or volleyball leagues or anything like that, like in the Midtown Health type of stuff?
And Michelle, that is something that, once again, we're looking for input on. A lot of our facilities do have basketball courts, and we can program things like basketball and volleyball and that type of thing. We have to balance that against, to be honest with you, the gym spaces have the lowest return on investment of the other areas. but it's something that's still very much under consideration of having some sort of a space like that for basketball and volleyball and other activities.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
that's further, that's further down the funnel of
Right.
decision making, but yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Jack, did you have something you wanted to get in before we ask another resident?
No, Michelle had her virtual hand up. I just wanted to make sure you got her.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Other questions, comments? And my goal here is I don't want anybody to leave wishing they had said something and they didn't. So what are those things that you need these folks to hear? Marty, I think I saw you.
Yeah, I don't know where my virtual hand is.
That's okay.
From a business standpoint, this may be something, Jack, that they've talked about. You know, to have this facility, amazing. To have this facility and to have it very walkable and move around. How is the township going to incorporate that to get people across the pike to be able to have people, you know, maybe bikes wanting to go to the park or go to the library versus getting in your car? Is there some future plan once this gets done to connect, I don't know, the street somehow to make it a walkable business district or to be able to ride your bike over to the park?
Yeah, I think, Marty, what we're doing is, one, on this site, we're making sure it invites walkability, connectivity. It can connect to the east and west. And so that's something with the design of the site we're very cognitive of. With Plan the Pike, they had actually ultimately, there was funding to study a multi-use trail down to Mount St. Joe's. So, you know, hopefully that can happen in the next umpteen years. I'll say umpteen because
Right.
it's a big nut to overcome with the engineering cost and the geography to get down there and the properties. Delhi Pike, I anticipate we use our traffic engineer and go to the county. The county owns Delhi Pike, so we would have to talk them into making changes to Delhi Pike. But Marty, we expect this to help push the walkability along Delhi Pike. Again, this is 5 years, 10 years, even 20 years out that we're looking to have Delhi Pike get softened and transformed. And if you look across the street on an overhead map, the park lines up directly across from this site. So our expectation is this is just the start, again, catalyzing these changes, and walkability and accessibility is one of the things that we hope to have flow through, and we think it will. But there, you know, Delhi Pike's a big, formidable street. So we would like to soften that. We'd like to get across that easier.
Yeah. Okay, great. Great question. Great question, Marty. Other thoughts, concerns, comments? Okay. I'm looking for virtual hands. I'm looking for waves.
What's next?
Great question.
So if we're doing another public session Wednesday, I'm actually going over to the school board tonight to just give them a very quick.
Let's ask about that, Jack. Can I ask everybody, or sorry to interrupt, but does anybody have oh, I see Holly's got her hand up, I think. Yeah. Let me ask you this question first. Sorry, Jack. Does anybody have a strong objection to the school district for putting their TIF dollars back into this project? They get the use of the pool, they get the preschool space, they get a new cultural center for the community. Does anybody have a strong objection or a strong concern about that part of the overall financing package? Because Jack has to continue to get a sense of that as he goes to the Oak Hills School Board.
No objection.
Okay, yeah. I just want to, yes, Peggy, do you have an objection? You got to unmute. You got to unmute.
Yeah. There would have to be like a timetable though, like how many hours they get to use it. You know, they can't just take it all
Sure.
from the citizens because
Yep.
the thing is, you know how schools can be. They can
Sure.
be just growing and growing and need more and more and more. So we would have to have some kind of legal agreement or some kind of agreement that the citizens have a certain amount of time and the school board too, the school.
Yeah, and I'm taking notes on all this. That's a great point. Make sure that it's balanced. I know that
Yeah.
Mike, from his business standpoint, right, the pool can't, they can't use everything.
Right, right.
Yeah, and that's all going to be part of the more detailed process. Jack, let's go back to Jack, Holly, and let Jack talk about the timeline since I interrupted him. And then I'll come back to you, Holly. Is that okay? Okay, great. Yeah, go ahead, Jack. Sorry.
Okay, so to Peggy's point, we have to first engage with the schools and make sure we are on board. We need them to approve the TIF district and letting us keep those. And in doing that, we would have to have the agreement of how much they're actually going to need to use the pool. You know, the classrooms, we understand they'll have use of the classrooms that are there, but we certainly, and there's two bodies of water. So one would be a warm water for the fitness center use and the other would be the competitive pool. Yes, and there would be an agreement there. So timing, there's that piece, there's a TIF piece. You know, there's the agreements with who we're going to contract to architect and design these. I'm assuming Elevar and Branstad or Carroll will keep moving forward there. There's putting together the financial piece with Andy. And again, all of these have to be worked out. So that would be basically the remainder of this year, again, if we keep moving forward, and then issue the financing, which doesn't happen until you get more of a design and you know exactly what you're going to put in the ground and need to finance. So now we're into the beginning of next year, which then you bid it out and find the contractor and start to work. One of the nuances of the site is it's one big site. It's not several different pieces. So how that is coordinated with the apartment building and our public pieces would be a part to work out.
Got it. Okay, great. Great. Thanks, Jack. Holly, you've got, make sure you unmute yourself.
Yes, hi. So I apologize if any of this mentioned. So regarding Midtown Health, I understood it that it wouldn't be open for vendors to come in, for instance, a yoga teacher to come in and rent the space out and hold their classes there. Are they bringing in the instructors and staff? Are those individuals relocating here, or would these be positions, jobs that are open to locals or the general public?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, no, we always hire local. You know, like all of the instructors at West Claremont are from that area. And so when we have a facility in Chicago, they're from, you know, that area. So absolutely, there's so many great instructors in the Cincinnati area, and we would definitely go local.
Okay. And then this may have been addressed, so forgive me. There's no retail. Are there any spaces that people can rent to open up boutique firms or their own small retail? Is there none of that?
Not now. I'll let Greg take that, but that is not in the plans. But Greg, if you could explain why real quick.
Sure, Holly. That's a great question, and certainly was requested by the community back in October when we had our first engagement. I think what we're suggesting here is that this is a development that doesn't have to be the end all for the entire Pike, but catalytic to development of the Pike in its whole, in its entirety, so that we would see those types of uses be able to fill in along the dimension of the Pike. As well, retailers are going to want sight lines from the Pike itself, and being behind those outlots do not give them that opportunity. That doesn't mean that we wouldn't have some small components of retail grab and go that are supported within the context and uses within the development, but certainly from a marketable space of retail, we leave that to the market to develop over time.
Okay, that makes sense. That's a great point. So I'm just imagining how, I'm sure it's been addressed in the thought process. Will the general public know to go down there, or do you think that it's going to be limited to the residents in the apartment? Do you know what I mean? Can't articulate that very well.
Greg, go ahead, Greg.
So
I
the
was going to say,
we have
yeah,
the dog
no,
park.
I think it's, it's a really good question because Russ was kind of getting to it earlier as to say, who markets this property? Who markets the venues? Who markets the programming? Certainly, Midtown will have a lot to do with the marketing of their own services and programs. And when you get that skill set on site, and I think Ginny was speaking to this, or somebody was speaking to this issue, they have a very strong capability relative to event management and operations of a rentable facility like this. So the idea that they may not have their brand out in front of this, that it might be Delhi Township as a brand of economic development and marketing, say within the community center, for instance, or the cultural center, as opposed to the fitness center, we have the opportunity to spread the brand across multiple venues and be able to market the individual programming that happens there on an individual basis. And I think those business operations aspects are all yet to be determined.
Okay, great. Thank you for answering my questions. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, right. Yeah, thank you. Those are great questions, Holly. Peggy, go ahead.
Yes, in the past, there was talk about Elder and Seton and the Mount maybe joining in the pool. Is that out?
No, because Oak Hills, we're going to ask them to partner with us. They'll get preferred time. They'll get to lock in a certain couple hours a day, but the remainder of it would be up to who's ever managing the facility, Midtown, to, have Elder, Seton, Mount St. Joe's. We've talked about St. Joe's recently. Yeah, they're still interested in starting a swim team if they have a pool to use. Elder, Seton go down to UC. So in the past, just depending on the cost of rental time, they would use it too. So I would expect they would. And that is a big thing for driving people to the site, families to the site, those kids, integrating them to the site. That's a big part of what we're looking to have created. So we hope they do. We want them to.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Final, we're getting pretty close, but if anybody's got some last concerns, again, don't walk away wishing you had said something. You've got all the big schmooze on today, or most of them. So this is a great opportunity. This is not the end of the public feedback. We're not all the way down the funnel, but just I'm looking. Now, if we were live in person, Mike Carroll just touched his ear. I would call on you if you, but I know that's actually not what you were doing. Okay.
Jeff, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, hey, Rose, if I can just put you on the spot, just what are you as a way to close, and I'll let Jack close formally, but do you just have a thought, like what strikes you about all the feedback you heard today? And don't forget to unmute yourself.
No, appreciate all the good feedback. I really appreciate the questions, the digging in, and really wanting to quantify and qualify a lot of what's going on here. And I do appreciate all of our residents who have attended the last one and this one. Some of the questions, as you know, we're not there yet, but definitely great opportunity for us to know what you're thinking, what your desires are, your needs are, what you see as a township wanting. Ginny, thank you for jumping in on those class things. That's really, really great. But having been working with this, like I said, past 18 months, the product that we've seen that they put out there, that Lisa's putting out there, it's remarkable. And it's very exciting to see such a great change come to Delhi and what I would call a rejuvenation and a renaissance of our area. So thank you, everybody, for your time, your work. I know the hours that has gone in on there on this project. So thank you. That's all.
One last quick comment for me. I'm really, I saw the initial, obviously the initial version of all the designs. And this group of professionals has been remarkable in how they've responded to the public input for a unique, active place. In and out, it just feels like they've really sharpened it and aligned it with where the community's coming from. And even though I'm up here in East Price Hill, I'm close to you guys. I don't have a horse in the race, but they're really, folks are listening. And so the more feedback we can get from folks, please tell people that we'll be back Wednesday, right at 6. Is that right, Jack? 6:30. Wednesday at 6:30. Please tell people. I know Jack's going to do more marketing, but the more feedback we get, the better we can make these decisions. Thanks to all the professionals. Thanks for all the residents for being here, but I'll give it to Jack for a quick sign up.
Thanks.
That's a quick.
Something to say after all that.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate it. Wednesday, 6:30.
Time, yeah, input. That's huge. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And we will summarize all of this and have it, it'll be typed up so you'll be able to access all the input from all these sessions.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thanks.
I think we're out.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, Jack.